Hey girlies, just a quick reminder before we dive into today's episode. The information shared on this podcast is intended to be general sports nutrition advice and education related to period recovery for female athletes. This is not specific to any one individual, and it may or may not apply to your situation. If you are looking for personalized guidance, be sure to apply to our RBSN Period Recovery Nutrition Coaching Program. Our 4-month period recovery program is designed to help you sustainably get your period back and keep it. You can apply now to get started in our program, and we'll leave the link for the program below. If you're not quite ready for that one-on-one approach, that's exactly why we created the Period Recovery Guide. It's designed to support the girlies working on period recovery, specifically if you've lost it due to hypothalamic amenorrhea. The full Period Recovery Guide is finally out now, and we will leave all of the information for it in the podcast show notes. This is the Eat More Carbs Podcast. Hello and welcome back. This is the Eat More Carbs Podcast. It's Jenna here with Reilly. We are both dietitians and we talk every Thursday about sports nutrition for the girlies. Specifically on this podcast, we talk about HA or hypothalamic amenorrhea and how you can get your period back. On today's episode, we're talking all about junk food, which sounds a little bit weird coming from dietitians, but I'm super excited to talk with you about this.
I'm super excited as well. We've been getting a ton of questions about foods to include and foods to avoid when it comes to period recovery, and we're going to be chatting all about that today.
Before we get into some of those questions that we will be answering, we're going to do our high and low, so sharing just a little bit about our week, the good and the parts that we wish had gone a little bit differently. And then at the end of the episode, we will do our training update. Reilly and I are both in our running era. Reilly is training for a half marathon to eventually run her full marathon this fall, and I just got done running a full marathon, so I'll be providing just a little bit different of a training update since I don't have a technical race that I am training for. Reilly, kick us off though. High and low, what's going on this week?
I'm going to start off with my low. I feel like my low and my high are very different topics, but I did just mention that today we're going to be talking about junk food because it's something that we've been hearing a ton about and just getting a lot of questions on. Something that I've also been hearing a ton about lately, I feel like I'm having this conversation every single day, the impact of not having your period and how common it is for people just to assume it's normal. Like, it's 2025 and we still think that not having your period as an athlete is acceptable. And I'm just tired of it.
It's wild because in this case, like just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. It doesn't mean that it's like a healthy thing to happen.
Yes. And I think I have this conversation every single day where people are just like being told that, oh, you're an athlete, of course you don't have your period, or it's not that big of a deal, or just go on birth control. And we're super pro-choice here at RBSN, but you have to make the right choice for you and your health. And oftentimes the birth control pill is potentially hiding or band-aiding a bigger problem when it comes to HA, when it comes to low energy availability and the absence of a normal menstrual cycle.
Yeah, it's crazy that we've been told that just because it's common, it means it's normal, and it's not the case.
It's not. So tell all your friends that they need to have normal cycles. Tell them to listen to this podcast. Like, we need to change the narrative when it comes to fueling female athletes.
I couldn't agree with you more.
On a random, I guess, completely different topic of this week for my high has to do with my daughter, Charlie. So if you are new to the podcast, I have a daughter named Charlie. She's about 16 months now, which is absolutely insane. I'm not handling it well. I'm like, she's old, I'm old, time's moving too fast. So Charlie right now is actually really into trucks. It's like her favorite thing. It is so cute because she loves like standing by the window and like watching the trucks go by. She's like obsessed with cars. Like she loves Mater, the little truck. She has some toy trucks. She just obsessed with trucks. And it's so funny because every single day from like the time that she wakes up to the time that she goes down, she's just running around the house going, truck, 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 truck. It's so cute.
That's adorable.
Yeah, I don't know where she picks it up, but like we don't drive trucks, but she's just obsessed with trucks. It's so cute. It's also just like so random. I don't know. I don't know. She's just like running around and just obsessed with trucks, and it's so cute.
I love that. It's so cute.
What about you? What is your high and your low for this week?
I live in Arizona. At this point in the year, we have to start walking our dog George in the morning because it's just too hot the rest of the day for him to be outside taking a walk. So this morning we went out to take him on his walk, and George saw the neighbor and got, as you may have guessed, like very very excited to say hello. So he went over and somehow convinced the neighbor to spill coffee all over him. So after that, George went on his walk covered in coffee, and then we had to unexpectedly give him a shower this morning because he was a coffee dog. So that's just George, and that's just what happens sometimes. Definitely a different morning than we had planned for in the Fisher household, but everyone is fine. Everyone is good. George didn't care. And now my dog has coffee perfume. So that's my low. On the other hand, though, I love taking walks in the morning. It is such a nice thing, like a great way to like start my day and just like get outside and move before it does get too warm. So like I am happy that I get to start my mornings like that. That's my high this week, is that we're kind of back to like that as our morning routine. That's my high.
I love that. It's so important to get outside. And I'm similar to you, where I just like love like being able to move outside, get outside. And it's just so nice to have that opportunity.
Yeah. And when the rest of the day is too hot, you just take advantage in the morning when it is tolerable to be outside, which is so funny that I'm sitting here in a jacket right now. I promise it is actually warm outside. I think for me, it's not even that I'm like cold all the time. It's that the outside is so hot that when I come back inside and I'm in air conditioning, the drastic temperature difference is so big that I'm like, oh, I'm cold all of a sudden, but I'll be hot again in 5 minutes. So that's why I'm in a jacket right now.
I mean, even if it's 80 degrees, if it's 110 degrees outside, that's a 30-degree change.
Yeah, exactly. It's the change for me. Even though it is getting warmer, we are talking today about whether or not you need to include junk food or maybe the food that society has deemed unhealthy in order to get your period back. Are those foods that you have to include in your fuelings? One of the things that Reilly does every Monday on her Instagram is offers free advice for period recovery, sports nutrition, and just general information, which is awesome. These past couple of weeks, we've been getting a lot of questions about whether or not you need to eat junk food in order to recover a period. We talk a lot on this podcast about getting your period back when you have LEA and when you have HA, which is low energy availability, and hypothalamic amenorrhea. Reilly, can you just give us a quick recap on what those things are?
Yeah. So when we look at low energy availability, specifically in the athletic population, we are looking at this basically negative energy balance that the athlete is in. Easy way to think about this. It's a very simple way to think about it, but your energy coming in is not enough to meet the needs that are going out. So what this does is it puts your body in this state of low energy availability where, again, things are maybe not as efficient, not as optimized, because you just don't have enough energy to do it all. This can really take a toll on your health as an athlete, but also your athletic performance. A lot of the symptoms and side effects of low energy availability sometimes might not be known. So sometimes, you might not know that you're at an increased risk for injury, or low energy availability is the reason that you're feeling sick all the time. Additionally, low energy availability does a lot of harm to bone health. It can hurt your cardiovascular health. And a lot of the times, athletes who are in a state of low energy availability have secondary hypothalamic amenorrhea, or the absence of a menstrual cycle. Oftentimes, the absence of a menstrual cycle or the lack of a period is the first kind of like light bulb moment that an athlete is in low energy availability.
We talk a lot in depth about each one of those signs and symptoms of low energy availability in the period recovery guide. Obviously, the guide is focused on recovering a period, but low energy availability can exist for athletes that are both male and female. Females experience the hypothalamic amenorrhea when they no longer have a menstrual cycle. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about specifically female athletes that are working towards period recovery. One of the big ways that we do that is by increasing our energy availability, by putting ourselves and putting our body into a positive energy balance. So that way our body has the ability to restore some of those body systems that Reilly just mentioned to be functioning properly. So the big question we kept getting was whether or not junk food plays a role in the ability to recover a period. So Reilly, as a sports dietitian, what are your thoughts on junk food for helping recover a period?
I think this is such an interesting question because, like you said, the amount of like inquiries I've been getting lately about like, how does dessert, fit into period recovery? Why do I have to eat unhealthy foods to get my period back? Can I eat junk food? How does junk food apply? It's just really interesting because before we even like kind of dive into this, we have to think about like the why. We always talk about the why at RBSN, and why are we being told that we need to eat these foods, right? Where is this information coming from? And I think what basically is happening is a lot of the foods that we label as junk food, a lot of the foods that we label as unhealthy, are energy dense foods. These foods contain a lot of calories, they contain a lot of energy. In our society, we're not always really recommending energy dense foods because a lot of people in society are focused on trying to decrease their energy consumption, and therefore they're avoiding these foods. Are these foods unhealthy? It depends on what your definition of unhealthy is, right? Not having a period is unhealthy.
Junk food can mean a lot to a lot of different people. I think that's going to differ drastically from one person to the next. I think that the biggest reason that I would say, yes, you need to include junk food in order to get your period back would be that you don't need to fear food or fear anything that society has maybe labeled as unhealthy in order to restore your energy availability or to increase your energy availability. So from that standpoint, I would say, yes, we don't need to be fearful and we don't need to label any foods as good or bad, because I think a lot of times we associate the word junk with a bad food, and food doesn't have morality. We don't have good or bad foods. We maybe have foods that we want to have more of, or maybe want to have foods that we have less of, but there aren't good or bad foods. And so I think that I would say yes in the terms of we shouldn't be fearful of any foods in the period recovery journey.
I agree with you 110%. It is really challenging with period recovery because our brain thinks in black and white, right? It likes the idea of food being good or food being bad. And with period recovery, those lines kind of get thrown all around, right? Because food isn't bad, food isn't good. On last week's episode, we talked about how a big mistake a lot of athletes are making on their period recovery journey is eating too many fruits and vegetables. When we look at society's like definition of good foods, right? Like fruits and vegetables are good foods. But in this situation, it's maybe not the most ideal, or it's not a good idea for you to eat too many fruits and vegetables. And I love what you said, Jenna, about like figuring out how we are defining junk food or bad foods, because there's really no definition that is the same across all situations.
I do think that like when we look at fruits and vegetables, we often associate them with being a healthy choice and with being a good choice. And just like we mentioned on last week's episode, we're not recommending that you remove them entirely or that you can't have them in your period recovery journey. But just like we wouldn't tell you you can't have fruits and vegetables, doesn't mean that you can't have foods that maybe society has deemed junk food or deemed unhealthy, like ice cream or dessert. I think people often think that like we're not incorporating those types of foods in our fueling just because we're dietitians, and that's definitely not the case.
It's not, because we talked about this also on last week's episode, but your fueling plan needs to be enjoyable and it needs to be sustainable. And it also needs to provide you with the amount of energy that you need. And a lot of the time as a busy athlete, you might be relying on some of these junk foods or some of these processed foods to help meet your energy needs. That isn't bad. Eating some goldfish because it's an easy source of carbohydrates after your workout and some sodium, extra credit there for some electrolytes. This food might be considered a junk food or a bad food, but it's not. It's providing your body with the carbohydrates that it needs, and it's something that's easy and quick to consume, and you can have it between classes or have it on the way to work. There's nothing bad about that.
I also like the example of like intra-run fueling. Right now, people are really on the Nerds gummy clusters and they're like, oh, this is great for intra-run fueling, which it is. For such a long time, candy in general has gotten this rap of being like a bad or unhealthy food, but we can take gels all day long and they're viewed as a health food because they're marketed as such. So there can be like a marketing component to like these health foods or these quote unquote junk foods that's really dependent on like how that food is labeled. But Nerds gummy clusters and your favorite gel, probably not that different when we're looking at it from a sugar and carbohydrate standpoint.
I always like to say that sugar is my favorite PED. It's my favorite. I absolutely love, there's this guy on Instagram, I'm sure he's on TikTok too, where he takes candy and he makes pre-workout that, like, if he was going to market this candy as a pre-workout using marketing techniques from supplement companies and things like that, but not lying, like what that product would look like, because it's just so interesting that we are okay with taking a pre-workout powder that's straight carbohydrates, but then we've, again, said candy is bad.
Yeah, it's so interesting what the marketing does from a psychological standpoint, where we go from being like, oh, I can't have that, it's Nerd gummy clusters, to being like, oh, I can have that, it's a Martin gel.
Exactly. I do think if you are listening to this episode and you're maybe just feeling a lot of emotions right now, I definitely think that's valid, because we might be saying things that are unfamiliar or maybe challenging beliefs that you've had for a long period of time. And like we talked about in our How to Get Your Period Back this summer episode, take some time to make small, sustainable changes. If you're not used to eating some of these foods, going into the kitchen right now and being like, oh, I heard this on the Eat More Carbs podcast, and kind of throwing yourself into it might be really overwhelming. But slowly starting to work in some foods that you might have not been fueling with before to help increase your energy consumption while still enjoying a lot of the foods that you have in your current fueling plan is a great place to start.
I love the idea of small and sustainable steps to incorporate some of these foods. We talk often about like making sure that we are incorporating some of our favorite foods.
Also, if you are confused about a certain recommendation that we have, like reach out with curiosity, right? We're here to help support you and help you get your period back. If something that we said doesn't make sense, or you're confused on should you have a sports drink? When should you have a sports drink? Should you use liquid energy? Should you try candy? Reach out to us. We're here to support you. We have a variety of different resources at RBSN. We have our period recovery guide that is self-paced if you're looking to kind of just get some education and start on your journey. Or we also have our period recovery program, which is going to provide more structure and accountability because you're going to work one-on-one with either Jenna or myself.
I think when we look at like consuming junk foods or these recommendations that we're making, the biggest thing, especially when it comes to period recovery, is making sure that you are staying consistent with fueling in a positive energy balance. Like we've talked about on so many other episodes of the Eat More Carbs podcast, that consistency component, that trend over time is so vital in order to working towards period recovery. And if incorporating some of the foods that maybe society has labeled as a junk food helps you do that, they're a great thing to incorporate in your fueling plan.
And it's not a junk food and it's not a bad food.
Yes. Reilly, what would you say to an athlete who maybe hasn't incorporated some of their favorite foods in their fueling in such a long time, who's just starting the period recovery journey?
I think first thing is to take it slow. Like I mentioned, we've talked a lot about how girlies love bagels, but they often don't report eating bagels on their food logs when they first come into the period recovery program. Jumping in and eating a whole bagel, like it might be too much for you mentally. You might not be ready to do that, but like start with half a bagel, right? If you love bagels, like you should be incorporating them into your fueling plan. I think that is one of the biggest mistakes is people jumping in with too many changes too fast. Because if they're not sustainable and there's too many changes that are made, we also don't know what's working, right? Like we don't know if you're increasing your energy during training because of this or because of that, if you're making too many changes. If you are somebody who wants to incorporate some of these new foods, like maybe try one like once a week. That's a goal that we like to set in the program is like, let's try a new food once a week. Let's see how we feel. And like, let's slowly work our way up.
I love that. That small, sustainable, realistic goal that we can set in order to make sure that we're making progress towards your end goal of period recovery, but in a way that doesn't feel like you're all of a sudden just jumping into the deep end of the pool without any type of like warning for what the temperature of the water is going to be.
One of the biggest like aha moments that a lot of our period recovery girlies have is if they opt to track their food within our program, they are often so surprised how their fueling changes over a couple of months. They have been practicing those small sustainable changes and slowly building on them so that they feel comfortable and confident with their fueling. And they don't realize how much they weren't eating at the beginning. They're always like, I can't believe I was surviving off of that. Honestly, the human body is amazing.
It's really a cool thing to be able to compare because we do track throughout the entire journey where people started and then where they end when they do have their period come back, and being able to look at that and say, wow, okay, maybe it didn't feel like we were making big changes, but then we can kind of look back and say, this is where we started and this is where we are now. That big leap is not something that we made overnight. It's something that took months in order to make it sure that it did feel safe, smart, sustainable for the athlete. And again, that's going to look different for every single athlete based on where they're at in their own journey.
It's like absolutely mind-blowing. Like so many athletes would be like, no wonder I was cold. No wonder I couldn't keep up during training. No wonder I was, hungry or thinking about food all the time. It's because they were starving. And I think that's something that is a kind of hard for a lot of people to hear is like in low energy availability, your body is starving. You're hungry. Even if you're maybe not getting the signals because your body has turned them off, you're starving.
Ooh, that is so true. And we don't want the girlies to be starving.
Nobody likes a hangry girl. Nobody likes a hangry girl.
All of the signs and the symptoms of your period coming back is one of the episodes that Reilly and I are going to do in the future here. So that way, if you are working through period recovery, you can start to pick up on some of the symptoms or the signs that your period is moving in the right direction of returning. So we will do that in the future. If you do have questions for Reilly and I about period recovery and about incorporating foods that maybe feel foreign or different for you in your journey, please reach out to us. We have talked a lot today about the period recovery guide, which is finally out and available for all of you to take advantage of. Reilly, how do people do that? And is there any special offerings that we have through the Eat More Carbs podcast?
Of course, we love our Eat More Carbs girlies. Like Jenna mentioned, the link is going to be located below in the notes section. And if you are a listener of the Eat More Carbs podcast, we are giving you 10% off. So you can use EMC10 as a code at checkout to get 10% off of the guide.
To wrap up today's episode, we're going to be sharing our training update. So just a little bit about the training that we're doing for running right now. So Reilly, what is training looking like for you? I've had people ask me if you're still liking Runna. So you need to definitely share whether or not that's something you're still using and enjoying.
I actually really like Runna. And I know that there's so many mixed opinions about Runna online, but I think it goes back to like nutrition and period recovery. And something that we talk about all the time is like, it really just depends. Everything is not going to be the right fit for every single person. I know that a lot of people love Runna and a lot of people hate Runna. And I've actually really been enjoying it. I think it just gives me more guidance and purpose with my workouts, because before I probably was overtraining a little bit, to be completely honest. And it's actually kind of just helped me like reprioritize things and has given me a little bit of guidance. It is an app, right? And it has some automation and things like that to it. So I don't follow everything to a T, but I have really been enjoying at least some of the structure and just kind of having a plan.
I love that. So what does it have you training this week?
So this week and next week are my peak mileage weeks. So right now I'm about 30 miles per week. I'm going out of town this weekend, so I might not hit that number, but right now I usually am kind of just doing 2 speed days a week, one like recovery run and then one long run. So some pretty standard stuff. And then a big thing that I've incorporated, and actually Runna has helped me do this, is now I'm strength training 3 times per week. I think it's been really, really helpful for my speed and also my recovery.
So are you doing those 3 strength training days in addition to some of those run days? Or are you still taking your 2 rest days?
I went down to 1 rest day, which I was really debating because I shared on a previous episode that I liked having 2 rest days, but one of my strength days is not like a super heavy strength day, and it's only about a 30-minute workout. So it is a little bit of a lighter lift, but it kind of just gets me moving, and I do a lot more like smaller movements and things like that, a lot of band work. It's not a true rest day or a recovery day, but I do think it is a lighter load day, which I've found to be really helpful.
I love that.
We'll see if it works though. I have my next race in less than a month, June 21st. So we will see how it goes, but I can continue to share if people are interested.
We're definitely excited to hear how it goes, and we're all cheering you on.
Thanks. We'll see. We'll see. How's your kind of like movement right now? How's your training? Are you able to run now? I know it's been a couple of weeks, but a marathon is definitely is a big thing.
Yeah. I've run since the marathon, which was good, but I definitely haven't run very far or very fast or anything like that. I'm just running when it feels good and when I want to, versus feeling like it's anything planned out. I'm still moving my body, but just in other ways. I'm just kind of taking it slow. Definitely still feel sore when I kind of least expect it during certain types of movements or during certain days and things like that. So just adjusting and kind of moving forward with what feels good and making sure that I'm not overdoing it and remembering to give myself grace, because I did just run a marathon like 2 weeks ago. So part of the recovery, part of the process of running a marathon is making sure that you are recovered fully before you try to start doing something that, you know, is overwhelming for your body at that point in time. So just taking it slow.
I read that it takes at least 1 month for your body to completely heal from a marathon.
I'd believe it for sure. It's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. As somebody who is attempting to train for one and attempting to run one, it is a lot.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Eat More Carbs podcast. If you do have questions for Reilly and I, please reach out to us or leave your questions in the comments of this podcast. You can find us online. You can find Reilly on Instagram at easy.sports.nutrition, and you can find me at jenna.fisher.nutrition. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please make sure you rate, subscribe, and review. And as always, remember to eat more carbs.